When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Microsoft Azure. Turn your ideas into reality with an Azure free account. Get everything you need to develop apps across cloud and hybrid environments, scale workloads, create cloud-connected mobile experiences, and so much more. Discover what you can create with popular services free for 12 months. Learn more at azure.com. That's AZURE.com. And sign up for a free account to start building in the cloud today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Two-Footed Podcast here on EPL Index. Now, before we kick things off today, I just want to share something with everybody. This episode is brought to you by our partners at Skybet. We've teamed up with Skybet because they truly understand what it means to be a fan. Skybet appreciates the length that people go to support their team in all areas, whether you're a match-going fan or otherwise, and there's just no better fit for us right now than a partnership with the good folks at Skybet. So with that said, let's go. What's good, boys and girls? Two-Footed Podcast. Today is Tuesday, the 3rd of September. Hope you're all well. The weather is changeable here today. Rain 1 minute, blue skies the next. Kind of overcast at the moment, but not too bad. Not too bad. I know that's the content you all come for. Right, as you will have heard before today's pod, today we are sponsored by our friends at Skybet. So let's take a look at the Skybet EFL Championship and what took place over the weekend. We'll do some Premier League winners and losers as well. We'll also have a look then at the next 4 clubs and rate their transfer windows. So, Luton 1, QPR 2. Luton's disastrous start to the season is one of the bigger talking points right now when it comes to the EFL Championship. Jimmy Dunn scored an own goal and actually put Luton 1-0 up at home in this game, but Nicholas Madsen and Michael Fry scored to give QPR a big win on the road. Burnley won, Blackburn won. Lyle Foster opening the scoring for Burnley, clearly not too upset about not getting the Premier League move he was looking for. But Andy Vyman, who just continues to truck along in what has been one of the more unusual careers, I think, that we've seen in English football. So he comes to England at the age of 16 from Austria, joins the Aston Villa Academy. He stays at Villa until 2015, and for a significant portion of that was a first-team regular. He leaves them, he goes to Derby. He does well at Derby. He goes to Bristol. He spends 6 years at Bristol, does really well. He has loans from Derby to Wolves and Bristol to West Brom at different points. Last season, he'd sort of fallen out of favour at Bristol and got that loan to West Brom. But this summer, he was snapped up by Blackburn on a free, and in 4 games, he's already got 2 goals. Just keeps on performing. Mactor Gay was sent off in that one for Blackburn, but they clung on for the draw. Cardiff 0, Middlesbrough 2. Middlesbrough have had a poor start as well, but this might get them up and running. We get Matthew Clark opening the scoring for Middlesbrough, and then Aaron Ramsey with an own goal gives Borough the 2-0 win. Coventry 0, Norwich 1. Borja Sainz with the goal. Again, Coventry, another club that have had a disappointing start to the campaign. Millwall, did I give you the score there? I don't think I did. Borja Sainz, yeah. Millwall 3, Sheffield Wednesday 0. Josh Coburn, Duncan Watmore, and Jake Cooper with the goals. Millwall are flying along this season. West Brom 1, Swansea 0. Jason Malumbi, young Irish midfielder, scoring the only goal of the game just before half-time. Portsmouth 1, Sunderland 3. Zach Swanson scored an own goal. Alan Brown made it 2. Roman Mundell made it 3. Luke O'Nien put through his own net late on. At least Sunderland fans got to make the very, very long journey back up the road in high spirits after watching their team put forward another good performance and pick up another 3 points. Leeds 2, Hull City 0. Matteo Joseph opened the scoring. Joel Perreault wrapped it up, and that is comfortable for Leeds. Plymouth 0, Stoke City 1. Million Mainoff with the only goal of the game. Oxford United 3, Preston 1. Jakobsen opened the scoring for Preston, but Mark Harris, Tyler Goodrum and Greg Lee gave Oxford a really good win. Liam Lindsay was sent off for Preston in that one. Derby County 3, Bristol City 0. Goodwin, Jackson and Ozzo with the goals for the Rams. And then finally, Sheffield United 1, Watford 0. Daniel Bachman scored an own goal in the second minute, and Watford were unable to find an equaliser, only managed one shot on target. That brings to an end their unbeaten run to begin the Championship season. So, Sunderland are top of the Championship after 4 games. They're the only team with a 100% record. West Brom have 10 points, 2 points behind Sunderland, obviously. Then we get Watford on 9, Leeds on 8, Blackburn on 8. Burnley and Borough, 7 points each. Sheffield United, Oxford, Derby and Stoke on 6. QPR, Norwich and Bristol City on 5. I was wrong about Millwall. I thought they were doing really well, but they've only got 4 points. I thought they'd won I thought that was their second win and they'd drawn one. I thought they won 7. That's my mistake. Swansea and Coventry also on 4. Portsmouth, Hull, Sheffield Wednesday, Preston and Plymouth on 2 points each. Luton on 1 point, as are Cardiff. Now, I'm not overly surprised by Cardiff because they were in the Championship last year and were a mid-table team, but Luton have just come down. That is to me a surprise that they're struggling so much. Be curious to see how much rope they give Rob Edwards this season. We will check out EFL League One, brought to you, of course, by our friend the Sky Bet. And what have we got? Well, we got Rotherham 2, Huddersfield 1, Blackpool 2, Wickham 2, Northampton 0, Burton 0, Shrewsbury 3, Leyton Orient 0, Peterborough 0, Wrexham 2, big win for Wrexham on the road there, Birmingham 2, Wigan 1, Bristol Rovers 2, Cambridge 0, Stevenage 0, Lincoln City 1, Mansfield 1, Stockport 1, Bolton 0, Exeter City 2, it's a bad result for Bolton, Crawley 0, Barnsley 3, and Reading 2, Charlton 0. So, Stockport are top with 10 points. Wrexham also have 10 points, as do Birmingham. If I'm not mistaken, didn't Stockport come up with Wrexham last year? I'm almost certain that they did. League the table for last year. Yeah, Stockport were top, Wrexham finished second, and now they are the top 2 teams in League One. So they all have 10 points. Lincoln, Huddersfield and Charlton all have 9. You have Barnsley, Reading and Bristol Rovers on 7. Exeter, Peterborough, Crawley on 6. Northampton and Mansfield on 5. Wickham, Stevenage, Rotherham and Bolton on 4. 4th start to the year for Bolton. Burton, Shrewsbury and Wigan on 3. Again, Wigan with a disappointing start to the year. Blackpool, Cambridge and Leyton Orient. Blackpool have 2, Cambridge have 1 and Leyton Orient have no points as yet. Still to get off the mark there. Right. EFL League 2. Gillingham 1, Chesterfield 0, Port Vale 2, Doncaster 3, Morecambe 0, Newport County 1, Grimsby 2, Bradford City 1, Walsall 2, Cheltenham 1, Swindon 1, Notts County 2, Carlisle 1, Tranmere 2, AFC Wimbledon 1, Fleetwood 0, Bromley 0, Crewe 2, Harrogate 0, Barrow 1, Accrington Stanley 1, Colchester 1, Salford City 1, MK Dons 0. Big win for Salford, who'd started the season dreadfully, but that at least gets them moving up the table, which unfortunately will make Gary Neville happy, which we never like to see. Gillingham are top on 10 points. You've got a raft of teams then with 9. Walsall, Barrow, Newport, Doncaster, and AFC Wimbledon. Notts County and Tranmere have 8. Bradford has 7. Bromley and Grimsby have 6. Chesterfield, Fleetwood and Salford have 5. Colchester, Harrogate, Port Vale and Crewe have 4. MK Dons, Cheltenham, Carlisle have 3 each. Accrington Stanley and Swindon have 2. And then Morecambe bringing up the rear, no points as yet. So that's where we stand with regards to that. Now, while we're still on the topic of Sky Bet, I have been sent the latest from the Sky Bet fan survey. So, which team has impressed you the most so far in the Premier League? Brighton and Hove Albion, 26%. Manchester City, 25%. Liverpool, 17%. Arsenal, 11%. Tottenham and Chelsea, 4% each. West Ham, 2%. Manchester United, 2%. That must be how many Man United fans were involved. Aston Villa, 2%. Then 1% each for Newcastle, Nottingham Forest, Ipswich, Fulham, Brentford, Bournemouth, Crystal Palace, and Everton. How anybody could say Everton have impressed them is truly amazing. Southampton and Wolves with no percent. Which team has been the most disappointing so far? Everton, 45%. Manchester United, 21%. Wolves, 8%. Southampton, 5%. Newcastle, 5%. Crystal Palace, 5%. Chelsea and Ipswich, 3% each. Man City, 2%. I'm not sure how anyone could be disappointed by Man City, who've won 3 games from 3. Also not sure anyone could be disappointed with Liverpool, who've won 3 from 3. But you've got Villa, Liverpool, Spurs, Forest, West Ham, Fulham, Brentford on 1%, and then it's 0%, but less than 0.5%, I assume, for Brighton and Leicester. So again, I'm not sure how Brighton are getting the most votes for most impressive, and then also getting some votes for most disappointing. It just seems strange to me. It's also very strange to me that over 1% of people said that Everton had impressed them the most, while 45% said they've been the most disappointing. Which summer signing do you think will have the biggest impact? So the options were Dominic Solanke, Emile Smith-Rowe, Matthias de Ligt, João Felix and Pedro Neto. 16% said Neto, 18% said João Felix, 19% said de Ligt, 21% said Smith-Rowe, and 26% said Solanke. So people are bullish on Solanke, which is good. Not sure I'd be as bullish on de Ligt or João Felix. Who do you think is the best Premier League winger of all time? So 23% said Cristiano, 22% said Salah, 22% said Giggs, 13% said Beckham, 7% said Bale, 6% said Hazard, 4% said Heung-min Son, which is an outrage, and 3% said Robert Pires. Robert Pires was better than Eden Hazard. He was better than Gareth Bale. I think he was better than Beckham as well. Giggs you would give longevity to, but like Son, for me, better than Hazard and Bale as well, based on longevity against Bale and just a better player than Hazard. Hazard was more talented, but had no consistency to his game. But I mean, this is nonsense. Mo Salah is by far the best winger in Premier League history. It's genuinely not even close. Like, any debate ended 3 years ago, and Salah is still performing at an elite level. And then finally, do you think Manchester United will win a league title under Erik ten Hag? 7% said yes. 7. And 93% had sense and said no. So there we go. Right. Before we go to break, let's do Premier League winners and losers. So we must start off with the winners. I think our first winner from the weekend has got to be Bournemouth. You're 2-0 down away from home with 3 minutes left, and you come away with a win. That is the dream. So Bournemouth, for sure, a big winner. I'm going to go Brighton as well, because even though they didn't win, I do think a draw away to Arsenal is a good result for them. Obviously, Arsenal are one of the favourites to win the league. Arsenal fans fully believe their team are going to win the league this year. So I think for Brighton to go there, especially given it's a new manager, it's nowhere close to his final choice of a team, missing a bunch of players. I think to go there and get a draw in a game where you started James Milner and Hinchelwood at left back, I think that's a great result. And the final winner then, it's going to be Liverpool, because they went to Old Trafford against their biggest rivals and smacked them around the place again. So it's got to be Liverpool. Biggest losers, Manchester United. You lost at home to your biggest rivals and got slapped around the place. Everton, you were 2-0 up with 3 minutes left at home and you lost. And then for my third loser, I'm going to go with Chelsea, because you're coming into this game off the high of the previous week where you went and hammered Wolves. You're playing a Crystal Palace team that are in poor form. And while you should have won the game, you didn't win the game. And it was a return to much of what we saw last season in terms of your inability to finish chances. So, yeah, winners, Bournemouth, Brighton, Liverpool. Losers, United, Everton, and Chelsea. And we'll go to break. Back after this.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Right, welcome back. So we're going to carry on reviewing the transfer windows of each Premier League team. We're doing 4 per day. So yesterday we did Arsenal, Aston Villa, Bournemouth and Brentford. Today we've got Brighton, we've got Chelsea, we've got Crystal Palace, and we have Everton. So let's start off with Brighton and Hove Albion. So Ibrahim Osman comes in. That one was done in February. Yankuba Minta, 30 million. Immense talent. Mats V for 25 million. Mario Kolderi Jubri on a free. Malik Yalkoi for 6 million. Rehan Gruda for 25 million. Jorginho Rutter for 40 million. Matt O'Reilly for 25 million and Ferdi Kadioglu for 25 million. That is an enormous spend for Brighton. That is the better part of 190 million, including Osman. Actually, might be even closer to 200 million, including Osman. They sold Kasper Kozlowski, which I'm disappointed. I would have really liked to see him get an opportunity, but he obviously didn't impress enough on his loans. Mark Leonard, Pascal Gross, Dennis Undav was sold and brought back a big fee. Jensen Weir was sold to Wigan. Billy Gilmore was sold to Napoli, and Mo Dahoud was released after a year and he joined Eintracht Frankfurt. So they probably brought in around 50 million in sales. They loaned out Shelkerpen, Tom McGill, Benicio Baker, Boati, Facundo Buenanote, Casper Nielsen. Osman went on loan to Feyenoord, where he will replace Yankuba Minta. Abdullah Sima was loaned out. Valentin Barco was loaned out. Marco Mahoney. Malik Yalkoi was loaned. It's a good loan for him at Sturm Graz as well. I'm interested to see how he does there. Carl Rushworth was loaned. Sarmiento was loaned. And Kozier Jubri was loaned. Also a couple of other young players. They released Adam Lallana, Jack Hinchy, Stephen Alzati, and Lee Kavanagh, none of whom make much difference to the outlook for Brighton. Now, I really like what they've done in terms of the incomings. I do wonder why they saw fit to buy 2 left-footed right wingers for significant money, but they obviously play the long game. They want to have a deeper squad. They want to be in positions where if one of the players does exceptionally well and you get to a transfer window and a club comes in with an offer that's acceptable, that they already have somebody in-house to step up and replace them. This was what they failed with last season when McAllister and Caicedo both left, and they didn't have anybody in-house to step in. Billy Gilmore, I suppose you could point to, but I mean, not really, you know. So I really like what they've done, but they didn't address centre-back, which I do think might hurt them this season, because I think Van Heck is average. I think Dunk has taken a significant decline. Webster's declined massively. And I'm not overly enamoured with what I saw from Igor Julio last season. So I do think they're a little bit light at centre-back. Now, they have 2 immense left-backs in Estupinan and Kadioglu, but Kadioglu can also play at right-back because he is right-footed. You've also got Launty and you've got Veltman, who can play centre-back and play right-back. He is past his best, but he's still a solid performer for them. I do think the defence is potentially the weak point this year. But I do expect Bart Verbruggen to continue to improve. I think he's an enormous talent. I think the midfield is a really strong group now. Like, central midfield, you're looking at Moder, Baliba, O'Reilly, Ayari, and Wiefer. That's a very strong group. And Hinchelwood, when he's freed from his stint at left back, goes into that midfield group as well. That's a very strong group. Then on the right wing, you're going to have March, Gruda, and Minta. March, obviously, when he comes back. That's a really strong group of right wingers. Left wing, you've got Matoma and Adingra, which is outstanding. Then for the number 10 position, Gruda can play there, March can play there. I have no doubt that Matoma could play there. João Pedro can play there, and Julio Enciso can play there. And then for the number 9 position, you've got João Pedro, Julio Enciso, Jorginho Rutter, Evan Ferguson, and Danny Welbeck. They are absolutely loaded with attacking talent. Very, very strong in each of the, say, 6 attacking positions, including the 2 midfield roles. Very strong at left back. Really good goalkeeper. But I do have concerns about the other 3 positions. But I think if you look at that attacking group, I mean, who really matches that for both quality and depth? Some have the depth, like Chelsea, but not necessarily as much quality, not as much potential. They do have some elite level players, don't get me wrong. They've got a couple that are further along in their development than any of the Brighton boys, but they don't have the same level of quality across the board. Like, they don't have as good a striking options as Brighton do. Brighton have 2 strikers who walk into the Chelsea team, in João Pedro and Evan Ferguson. Liverpool have the same kind of quality, but not the depth. Obviously, Salah's better than any of them, but the rest are comparable, but they don't have the depth. They have good depth, but not like this. This is outrageous depth in the front 4 positions, right wing, 10, left wing, and number 9. So I do applaud Brighton. I see the succession planning there. You can see very much that they have a long-term ambition and a long-term plan. I would imagine this is probably the final season that Matoma is at Brighton, for example. So he goes, Adingra steps up to become the starter, and then Ibrahim Osman becomes the backup. I assume that's the plan. And I think that's a really strong plan to have. Likewise, on the right, my guess is that Gruda becomes the starter when he's back fit, with Minta as the successor, but Minta will still get a lot of games. Solly March might have to become more of a squad player. I think ideally they'd like Evan Ferguson starting as the 9 once he's back fit, with Pedro as the 10. That then puts sort of Julio Enciso in a squad role, which, given he's still working his way back from injury, probably the right move. But it's just very, very strong. Very, very strong. And then, like, in midfield, I think it'll be O'Reilly and Wiefer, which gives you Baliba and Hinchel, would say, or Baliba and Ayari as your depth, so as your successors. It's just very, very strong. They've nailed the window in terms of who they brought in. They've been very, very ambitious. They've spent big money. Actually, I didn't even mention Ruder when going through that. Like, it's insane the depth they have. I didn't mention him as an option as the 9 or the 10. They're just in a great position. My guess is they might be looking at João Pedro leaving next summer, and Ruder is the successor to him. That's what I would guess, because he can play 9 or 10. He could also play wide, but he's got a really strong all-round game, similar to João Pedro. That's a great group of forward players, really strong midfields, really good left-backs. If Kadiaglu's the right-back, then it fixes a lot of problems for them as well, and they'll be dynamite going forward. But again, I do have concerns with the centre-backs. I'm going to give them an A+, though. I am going to give them an A+, because I just think that you can't overlook the quality they've brought in. Minta is an exceptional get at 30 million for the ceiling he has. Yalkoi, I think he's got a chance to be the next N'Golo Kante. I really do. I think he's a special one. Gruda is just a huge talent. Ruder is a really good player that I think people have underrated because of the circumstances at Leeds. O'Reilly is outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. Wiefer's good. O'Reilly is outstanding. And then Kadiaglu, I think he's got a chance to be absolutely outstanding in the Premier League. I think his game is going to translate really well. So I'm giving them an A+. Next up then is Chelsea. So they gave new contracts to Cole Palmer, Samuel Raksaki, who I'd assume his brother plays for, his brother is Jessamine, who plays for Crystal Palace. Tyreek George, Eddie Sharman-Lowe, and Kepa signed a 1-year extension because he was sent out on loan. So they bring in Omari Kellyman, significant overpay for a player that was a couple of years away from being Premier League ready. Toasted on a free is a good signing. Mark Wee for 5 million is a gamble worth taking. Dewsbury Hall at 30 million, I still don't really see the logic in. It's funny because if Brighton had signed him, they wouldn't have signed Matt O'Reilly, and I would rather have Matt O'Reilly. And I really like Dewsbury Hall, but I would rather have Matt O'Reilly. Renato Vega is a very talented, high upside, young talent who's versatile but doesn't really have a position. Caleb Wiley's a few years away from being ready to play for them at left back. Aaron Anselmino's a few years away from being able to play at centre back. They sign Philippe Jorgensen. They sign Mike Pender, 2 young goalkeepers that I think are a few years away. They do bring in João Pedro. Not João Pedro. They bring in Pedro Neto and João Felix. Neto I love, but it's a big risk for a player who's injury prone. The João Felix deal, though, is just a shambles because they had no interest in buying him, and they've overpaid for him in order to get Conor Gallagher off their books. And they've paid more for him than they got for Gallagher. It's just a really bad deal. Now, they sold Maatsen and got a good fee. They sold Ziyech and lost a ton. They sold Amari Hutchinson, got a good fee. Sold Lewis Hall. I would rather have Maatsen and Hall than the left-backs they have, but such is life. Thiago Silva left, Milan Sarr left, Diego Moreira they sold to themselves at Strasbourg. Gallagher out to Atleti. Tino Anjorin left on a free. A player of that talent at that age on a free. Lukaku for 25 million, they lost 75 million on him. Angelo Gabriel, very talented young player, signed directly from Brazil, spent last season on loan at Strasbourg. It did not go well, and yet somehow they've managed to make a 6 million profit selling him to Saudi Arabia. It's a little bit fishy. They also brought in Jadon Sancho on loan and loaned out a whole bunch of players. And I'm not going to go through them all. Didn't address the goalkeeper. Didn't bring in a number 9. Still trying to force a midfield double pivot that doesn't really work. Don't really have a settled centre-back pairing. Signed more youngsters that are just going to get lost in the traffic. Massively overpaid for João Felix, who you didn't want, in order to sell Conor Gallagher for a smaller fee to try and balance your books for this year. It is an absolute catastrophe. I think it's a dreadful window. I genuinely think it's a dreadful window. When I look at the amount of money they've spent there, you're talking 19 for Kellyman, 5 for Gui, that's 24. 30 for Dewsbury Hall is 54. Viega's 12, that's 66. 8.5 for Wiley, that's 74.5. 21 for Jorgensen is 95.5. 15.5 for Anselmino, which is 115. And then 54 for Neto, it's 169. And 44.5 for João Felix gets us to 213.5 million, I think. And you signed one player who improves your first team. One player who improves your first team in Pedro Neto, who's injury prone. I think it's a catastrophe of a window. No goalkeeper, no striker. And remember, the Sancho deal is an obligation to buy. They have to buy him next summer. Arsenal do not have an obligation or even an option on the Sterling deal, which means they can happily send him back at the end of the season. So not only did Chelsea not get rid of Sterling, they've added another winger who I'd be stunned if he becomes a starter for them. I'd be genuinely stunned. And if he does, he's starting over either Pedro Neto or Christopher Nkunku, who was your big glamour signing last summer. It's a D. It's a D window for Chelsea Football Club. That is hella bad. I will see you after this break. Right, welcome back. So next on our list is Crystal Palace. They bring in Chadi Riyad, Daichi Kamada on a free, Ismail Assar, Maxence Lacroix, and Eddie Nketiah. They sell Michael Olise, Joachim Andersen, Jordan Ayew, and Sam Johnston. They make a significant profit. They also loan in Trevoh Chalobah and Matt Turner, while loaning out Teo Adaramola, Malcolm Abue, Jesser Naksaki, Killian Phillips, Ahamada, and Odson Edward. Jaro Riedewald was the only player released that was contributing last season. But I do note Nathan Ferguson also released in what is one of the sadder tales in football in recent years, 23 years of age now, moved to Crystal Palace in 2020 and played once because of his injuries. Once. Such a shame. He was so promising when he came through at West Brom. Such a talented player. But he just seems to have a very, very serious injury that is not allowing him to get back on the pitch. And his one appearance was in the 21-22 season. In the January. No, sorry, I'm wrong. In the December. So he hasn't played a senior game since December of 2021. He played 8 minutes and stoppage time So what are we saying? 15, 13 minutes? That's what he played in his 4 years at the club. Such a shame. I really like the window. Losing Elise is hard, but they were always going to lose Elise this summer. He was just too good to be there for much longer. They made a £42 million profit on him, which is great business. They lost Anderson. I would have preferred to lose Anderson than Guehi, so I think that's a win as well. They made I want to say they made about a 15 million profit on Joachim Anderson as well. So given his age, he's 28, he'll be 29 just at the end of this season. I think that's really good business. I think they've sold really well. Sam Johnson, they signed him free. They got 10 million for him. AU, they had rinsed pretty much every bid he had to offer out of him. Got 5 million for him. I think they've bought really well. Riyad's a huge talent. Sarr is very, very good when he's on his game. I think Lacroix at 18 million is going to turn out to be very good business. I think he's going to be one that in a few years people might be looking at and saying, how on earth did they get him for 18 million? He's a big talent. And Nketiah, I don't love the fit with Mateta, but I can see the logic where maybe it's him and Mateta as a two with Eze behind. That I think could work well. I don't know if it works with Nketiah and Eze behind Mateta, but I did say I thought what Palace needed was to move on Edouard and bring in a different type of striker, a poacher, and that's what they've got. So fair play. I think they've upgraded their defence. I think Lacroix and Riyad over Anderson is an upgrade. Daichi Kamada on a free is one of the signings of the summer. I think overall they've gotten stronger even with losing Elise. So for me, it's going to be an A window. It's going to be an A minus, but it's an A window for Crystal Palace. Don't think they've really left anything that they haven't got strength in. They've got a good backup goalkeeper maybe. Turner's not great, but Trevoh Chalobah coming in that defence as well. Like, that's a really strong defensive group now. They've got good wing backs. They're really strong in midfield. And the attack, while they've lost Elise, I do think Kamada and Sarr together is good. I think they're both good individually, but I think it's good. It's not Elise good, but it's good. So there won't be a huge drop-off there. And bringing in Nketiah is definitely an upgrade on Edouard as a striker. So, yeah, for me, it's an A- window. Everton. The more I look at this, the more I think they've actually done well. They went into the summer with little to no money to spend. They basically swapped Irabunum for Dobbin, which I think is a good move. I think they got the better player out of that. Certainly the better player now. Dobbin might have the higher ceiling. Iliman and Jai for 15 million is really good business. Jake O'Brien for 16 million. Yeah, I mean, he went last summer for $1 million, but he did really well at Lyon. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he does in the Premier League. He never really got a chance at Palace. I don't think he played a league match. He did not play a league match for Palace. He didn't play a senior game for Palace, in fact. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he does. I think it's 16 million. It's good value. They bring in Asmir Begovic on a free as a depth keeper. It is what it is. But they've done really well in terms of loans. You bring in Jack Harrison. You bring in Jesper Lindstrom, Aurel Mangala, who we know can play in the Premier League, and Armando Broja. Now, the Broja one I'm not massively fond of because they've already got a bunch of tall strikers that don't score a lot of goals, but I do think he, at 23, has the potential to be a pretty decent goal scorer in the league. Now, he does have an injury that's going to keep him out for a little while. They have an option to make that permanent rather than the obligation that Chelsea were trying to foist on other clubs. So given they went into the summer with no money, I think they've come out of it pretty well because they've got all those players in and they've made a profit. Even after loan fees, they're coming out of it with about a 20 million profit because they sold Amadou Onana, the Dobbin deal, and Ben Godfrey. So they make about a 20 million profit after loan fees and everything are considered. They were going to lose one of Onana and Branthwaite. They could easily have lost both. They came very close to losing both. But they managed to keep Branthwaite, which again is a big win for them. Onana's a significant blow, but they can patch it together in midfield. You've got enough players that can fill minutes there. Maybe you can repurpose a Jack Harrison into midfield as well as another option. But Mangala helps hugely in midfield. Iroegbunam will help in midfield. You've got Garner. You've got Idrissa Gueye. You've got Doucouré. It's a pretty strong midfield group that can fill minutes. Lindstrom can play central midfield if you need him to as well. So overall, I'm actually very impressed by what they did, considering they had no money. Now, early signs are not good, but that's a lot of the players that were there last year. It's not the new players that are struggling. Iroegbunam hasn't had a great start, but Njai hasn't really featured nearly enough. He played at the weekend and he looked good. O'Brien hasn't started the game yet. I think they're going to be... I think that's a good summer. I do. I think it's a good summer. For a club that had no money, to keep Branthwaite and to make a profit while undeniably improving your squad significantly, I think it's a good summer. And I do think Dyche will turn it around, and I do think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to finish somewhere in the 12th to 15th range. But of course, there is the threat of administration hanging over them. We'll wait and see what happens with John Textor. There is the threat of another points deduction. We'll wait and see what happens with that. That's based on previous years' discrepancies. But overall, I think they've actually had a good window. Even if there's not a bunch of players there that make you go, oh, that's a great signing. I think there's a lot of good signings there. A lot of signings for the future. I really want to see what O'Brien and Branthwaite looks like as a pairing. Especially with Patterson at right back. Now, Michael Ankel has not started the season well at all. They probably should have brought in another right back in the summer. But then Dyche was adamant he wanted to keep Coleman around and wanted Ashley Young in the squad. And the right back he wanted was Kieran Trippier. But I do think there's enough there for Everton fans to think this could be something if it's allowed to develop and if we can sort our finances out and just start to add players, over the next couple of windows. Maybe sell on one or two, get Calvert-Lewin out. He's been there too long and he's gone stale. Maybe try and cash in on Pickford if someone will give us a decent fee for him and go and get ourselves a young goalkeeper that we can bring in and develop. I do think there's a good future for Everton, but they're going to have to navigate some real choppy waters over the next probably 6 months until the ownership situation gets completely rectified and they know that they have some solid ground underneath them. They've obviously got the new stadium coming next season, which should be a source of great excitement, but obviously with the ownership situation, there's question marks over the debt and all that kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, it's a tough time to be an Everton fan, but I do think this window should give you some reason for cheer. I'm going to give it a B+. And that's it. I'll be back later today with Two Footed Extra. This show was brought to you by Sky Bet, as you heard at the start of today's show. We want to thank them for their continued support. And as always, to get involved with Sky Bet, you need to be over 18. And if you have questions or queries or problems with gambling, visit begambleaware.org and stay safe. Bye-bye.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.